what's important for the Baha'is to do in a situation like this is we're given the guidance, this is my view, from the hidden words, where he says, first, possess a pure and kindly and radiant heart. Then he says that justice is the most important thing in this revelation. And he defines justice as seeing the truth with your own eyes and not through the eyes of your neighbor. So Baha'is should not get caught up in the frenzy of the war or be taking sides, one side of humanity against another side of humanity. Now, if they're directly in the areas and they want to participate, then they can do the humanitarian relief work or work as doctors, healing wounded soldiers, bringing food and medicine in there. That's something they can actually do. They can raise up money, and they can, when they do Red Cross type work, they help both sides. It doesn't matter to them if a Ukrainian person's injured or a Russian soldier's injured. If the Red Cross takes them, they'll heal them and bring them back to help. And the Baha'is have to have a universal love for humanity and understanding this. Now, in order to follow Baha'u'llah's injunction of justice, if we have justice, he says, we will then have peace. This peace on earth that the Baha'is are waiting for, the most great peace or the lesser peace, the Baha'i writings are explicit. They state that this will be founded upon the most great justice. So there's not going to be any peace on earth. The people will say peace, peace, and there will be no peace until first the most great justice is established. So the Baha'is need to be working and focusing on the most great justice, and then afterwards the lesser peace and the most great peace will be established outwardly in civilization upon that foundation. The Baha'is in general don't talk about the most great justice. The same people that told them that Showqi-Effendi didn't have a will have gone around and told them they should do this and this, and none of it's working. Because the prophecy says they'll say peace, peace, and there'll be no peace. So give it up. That's not part of the plan of God. The plan of God isn't to build a house on a pile of sand and have it collapse. The plan of God says to lay the foundation, the rock, and that when the house is built on the rock, it will never fall. So the most great justice is the foundational rock of which divine civilization will be founded upon, and that's the work the Baha'is have to be working on, is the most great justice. Well, justice doesn't mean social justice, and justice doesn't mean revenge. Oh, he murdered them, let's arrest and kill them. People think this is justice, or I'll get justice, but they mean revenge. Or sometimes they want, if somebody broke their car windshield for $200, justice is the person who broke it pays $200 and fixes the windshield, and they get $50 for emotional damage. So they think this is justice. This is not justice. All those are appearances of what people consider to be justice or not justice in particular instances. In order to determine who owes who what, if they smashed your windshield, you have to see the truth first. That's what Baha'u'llah says the most great justice is. The most great justice isn't the most great chastisement, punishing everybody because God's angry and has to get his anger out of his system. That's Christian theology of Anselm and the other theologians. This is all bunk. The most great justice means seeing the truth with your own eyes and not through the eyes of your neighbor. That's where the Baha'is come in. We're educators. We're teachers. If we can remove the veils that prevent the reality of something being seen, that is what we do. And he says in no way should the veil be suddenly rent asunder. So what we do is we lift veils. This war is between Western Christians and Eastern Orthodox Christians. If the Baha'is will go back and research what the Pope was doing in 2014 with the Eastern Orthodox people when the Crimean Peninsula was first invaded, and how all the Orthodox ones met for the first time in 1,000 years with the Pope, or 800 years, in Cuba to have a meeting, and what Bartholomew and Kirill are doing, you'll see that there's an orchestration behind the Christian leadership that is where the root of the problem is located. And because it's located amongst the religious ones and spiritual leaders behind Western Christianity and Eastern Orthodox, as Baha'is, we have an ability to educate those leaders about what the truth of Christianity is. And it will not only unite the Christians, so they'll stop fighting with each other, it'll unite the Christians with the Jews and the Muslims, and everybody will stop fighting with each other. That's the role of Baha'is. Abdulbaha defines the role of the Baha'i spiritual and religious people in his book, The Tablet of Leadership, or the explanation, or I think it's Risala Saisi or something. It says treatise on government. And he says that the Baha'is, the religious people, should not foment discord to start wars. He says the religious people, which in the Baha'i faith is the Baha'i teachers, should give guidance to their governmental leaders about what the writings and spiritual teachings are that are the remedy as they understand it for the problem. The Baha'is need to follow Shoghi-Effendi's 5-step procedure for doing this. They can do it as individuals, as part of their teaching effort, but it's more powerful if they do it as members of their local Baha'i council or their national Baha'i council, which some of them still call spiritual assemblies. So when these ones get together, they follow Shoghi-Effendi's 5 steps. So the issue is the war between the Eastern Orthodox Russians and the Western Christian NATO people, and the theater of the battle is the Ukraine. So that's what they meet to talk about after saying their prayers and turning to God and asking God to show them what he's doing so they don't mess up what God's doing and go against it, and can even contribute to see what God is actively doing. So this is one of the things that makes the Baha'i consultation different, is we want to see what God's doing. We can see what the people are doing. We don't like people fighting, but we want to know what God's doing. So we use 5 steps. So first, we ascertain and agree upon the facts. And that means researching what happened with the gas and oil company in Ukraine, the sanctions against the Russian state-owned gas company, the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipeline, the Ukrainian businessman history that goes back to Nazi sympathizers during World War II, and whether that's accurate or not. Also, the German involvement with the Russians for pumping gas into Europe, the trade deals between Russia and China, what China's up to with Taiwan, back to what the West is doing, why NATO has expanded into 30 countries, why they're following Zbigniew Brzezinski's book, The Grand Chessboard, to have an economic war to take over the whole world by surrounding Russia on the east, west, and south. They have to ascertain and agree upon the facts of the situation. Then they have to ascertain and agree upon what the Pope Francis is doing, what Bartholomew's up to, what they were doing in Cuba, why they went into the Crimea, and then also what Cyril's up to in Moscow, a patriarchate, and the sectarian religious division between the 3 main groups in the Ukraine. The Ukrainian Orthodox controlled by Ukraine, the Ukrainian Orthodox under the Moscow Patriarch, and the autoencephalous Greek Ukrainian Orthodox that are in common communion with the Pope, which the Russians call unis. Then there's a religious history to this whole area that goes back to the Byzantine Empire. Those are the facts. So they got to ascertain and agree upon the facts, and there's more facts. Then the Baha'is need to consult the spiritual and administrative teachings around which this problem revolves. Then the Baha'is in their meeting can have a full and frank discussion about this whole thing and sort of get it all off their chest, air out their feelings and their emotions. Then somebody would offer a resolution, which might be the right action to take, sending a letter to the governments, supporting the Red Cross, contacting Bartholomew, Francis, and Kirill, and the 3 patriarchs of the Ukrainian triune group that was trying to become one Ukrainian church, and get to the bottom of this and find out what's really going on this level. And then they would implement and publish the resolution. They'd vote on it. So that way the Baha'is would produce a statement the way Abdulbaha defines in the Risala Sayyisia, the treatise on government, and they just give guidance to the people. And it has to state in there. They said, look, what we're doing is restricted to spiritual and religious matters. We're sending this to you because we believe if you read this and your heart turns to God, God himself will inspire you through the rays of the Holy Spirit, as well as Biden and Putin and the other ones, to come together and resolve the problem. So no problem is going to be resolved without individuals turning to God in their hearts. Everybody involved in the situation has to have the love of God in their heart and the love of humanity first, and turn to God, looking for God's guidance, for God to show us what God's doing, and for God to tell us personally and individually through inspiration and inner perception, so we would know directly and immediately what it is we should do. That's what the Baha'is should be doing. And they should be teaching other people how to do this too. By example, people need to learn how to go inside, meditate, come into the presence of God, and he's the prayer hearing and prayer answering Lord, and in their prayer say, oh Lord, what should I do about the Ukraine? God will tell them, but they have to be receptive to hear it. And they have to know that it's actually God that's answering their prayer, not a vain imagination. So they have to be purified. And this is a purification, of course, that we're going through, that's prophesied of in the Lai Haudaj at the Black Sea, the Tablet of the Holy Mariner, the Surah Ireus, and the Tafsiri Rum. It explains that, which is Byzantine or the Ukraine, explains that these things happen so we will grow and evolve spiritually. So people will fall off the fig tree of materialism and have a self-realization that they're a soul that exists eternally. We have a beginning, we don't have an ending, and that we're here on earth for a particular purpose of growing spiritually and getting to know and love God. As long as anything else occupies the normal object of the mind, is belief, which is reality, and ultimate reality, Alami Haq, this is the reality of God, the source of the cause of causes. If anything else becomes the focal point of our preoccupation, other than the love of God, then we're already in error. This is the foundation of the most great justice. We have to see the truth with our own eyes and not through the eyes of our neighbor, know what our purpose is, and know what the will of God is for us personally, and implement that. When we are able to promulgate this practice that other people can put into practice from the teachings of Bahaullah, they will solve their own problems. The Baha'is are not here to solve everybody's problem. Shoghi writes about this. The purpose of the manifestations isn't to solve every logical puzzle or every ancient mystery or every little riddle, or to correlate different contrasting views and show the perfect harmony of every detail. No, they reveal the effulgence of God's presence in general, so we can come into it specifically and receive particular divine guidance. Now, they do address certain questions and details and specific things, but in general, that is just to reify and support the individual who received those tablets and writings to have their own direct and immediate personal experience in God. That's what this is about. When people are spiritual, Abdulbaha said, any system will work. He says if they're not spiritual, if they're not spiritual, then no system will work. And that includes the Baha'i system. And we can see through the deviation from the covenant how the Baha'i world is totally dysfunctional, completely misguided, and doesn't know what to do, and has no unity amongst its thought in world endeavors, which is the first candle. Whereas, we know exactly what we're doing and how to go about this. And what I said is what the Baha'is should do. They should read the tablet on the treatise on leadership. If they want to understand this Ukraine issue, have a group of 9 of them get together, follow the 5-step process of Shoghiafendhi, and beg God to tell them what he's doing and show them and how they can participate and which way to do that, and then vote on that resolution. And if it has to do with communicating to world leaders, explain to them that this is what they understand the guidance of God to be through the Baha'i writings, and that they're forbidden to tell the government leaders how to implement it. And it's up to them to individually turn to God, and they will be inspired undoubtedly with God's remedy. And that's the best thing the Baha'is can do right now. Now, if they're already in the army and they're in the military, well, they have to fulfill their duties. And it doesn't matter what side they're on, as far as we're concerned. And then the other thing they can do if they aren't conscripted into sides is that they can, and they want to do something to help the humanity crisis on the physical side, that they can help the Red Cross and work in army hospitals and things like this and bring humanitarian aid. Start a local group and raise money. And of course, this should go to the people who are dying, which are specifically the Ukrainians. So the NATO doesn't need us to donate money to them. And it looks like Putin and the Russians Federation don't need us to donate money to them, but food and welfare and taking refugees in, this is to help the poor Ukrainian people that are innocent civilians like we are, caught in the conflagration between the Pope and the Protestant Western community of the eagle and the bear of the Orthodox Church of Russia fighting each other. It's like watching a giant animals attack a corpse in the jungle before it's dead. We hear the person screaming and the bear and the eagle are tearing at its limbs and poking at its eye, and it's ripping it limb to limb, and the parts are spreading out and the people are fleeing the country. It's horrible carnage. This is the result of the hands breaking the covenant. Those hands wouldn't have broke the covenant. This International Baha'i Council that Shoghi-Effendi and Mason Remy established would still be in Israel. And we'd still probably be able to have rebuilt the Baha'i temple in Ashgabat, Russia. At the time of Baha'u'llah and Abdulbaha, Russia and America were allies. Lincoln and the Tsar Alexander both got rid of the slaves and the serfs at the same time, having heard the revelation of the Bab and Baha'u'llah in the 1860s. So the outcome of this, from my point of view, is Russia and America will be allies again, like they were at the time of Lincoln and Tsar Alexander when slavery and serfdom were eliminated. And this time they'll come together to eliminate hyper-nationalism. Okay, I live in Iran, I live in Israel, I live in North Korea, I live in Venezuela, I'm from Italy, I'm from Greece. So I have some concept of my culture and my nation, but I'm a human being first and foremost. I'm like not an American before I'm a human being. I'm not Russian and not human, or Ukrainian and not human, or Iranian or Israeli and unhuman or inhumane. We're human beings first, and there's one God. And then we have our diversity. We should be celebrating our diversity, not fighting at loggerheads about it, because we have a unity. If we don't focus our gaze in the direction of the unity of this, how are we going to enjoy each other's diversity? We don't want to homogenize the planet. That's part of what this war is about. The Russian Slavic culture is concerned that Western materialism will come in and homogenize everybody into being merely materialistic, whereas they have a deep culture of existential spirituality, ancient legends and Vedas of Russia, like the Hindu Vedas. They have spiritual traditions, a way of understanding the soul of the individual in relationship to reality, which predates Christianity. They're allied with many Muslim countries. They have a unique brand of understanding the Christian revelation, different than the cultures of the West. This culture and diversity should be preserved. Pushkin, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, Kafka, the different existentialist writers, different German, Russian thinkers, Russian scientists. I mean, this is a wonderful, great, thriving, beautiful civilization. And I myself haven't seen those tablets of Baha'u'llah and Abdulbaha and Shoghi-Effendi you're mentioning that talk about the czars. If you ever had a chance to send those to me, I'd appreciate that. But no, we don't just go by the gloriousness and the greatness of something in the past or what the validity of it is now. We look at the deeds of it and what the results and the fruits of the thing are. And this fruit, this result of war is beneath the honor of both Biden and Pope Francis, and is certainly beneath the honor and dignity of Putin and the Russian Federation and the Duma. These people are coming out of the Cold War. They were there when the Berlin Wall fell. They've been indoctrinated by religious belief systems and different materialistic views. and they are suffering by being forced to fulfill their role like an executive of a company that has to do the bottom line to make the most money for the stockholders, but knows that 1,000 people will die because the product, like the Johnson baby powder, causes cancer. So they cover it up because of the bottom line instead of just coming clean. They don't know what to do. So Biden and Francis and Bartholomew and Kirill and Putin, they know what to do. It's not like they've gone through the Baha'i firesides. It's not like they've gotten this revelation. It's not like they received this wisdom the way Woodrow Wilson did, the way Franklin Delano Roosevelt and Eleanor did, the way Dr. King did, the way Tolstoy knew about the faith, the way Gandhi did. I mean, if these world leaders just simply went through the fireside experience and saw what the claims are that Baha'u'llah fulfills and what the teachings and writings are, they can take them for what it's worth. And it's just a suggestion, because it's spiritual, for a sovereign person to decide to make a choice. And if they don't have the facts, they're going to make a wrong choice. So this is why it says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, meaning all the people who were God's people. And Shoghiafendi's 5-step process starts with ascertainment and agreement upon the facts. I don't see how the Baha'is are going to do anything decent. They can't even agree on the fact that Mason Remy is the legally adopted son of Abdulbaha. As long as the Baha'is are thinking like that, there's no way they're going to get into deeper issues of reality. I mean, what an obvious, simple fact. He's the president of the House of Justice that Shoghiafendi welcomed, and he's Abdulbaha's son. He's an Oxon. This is simple. If somebody can't accept that, or can accept it and not know how to communicate it to others, that's better than not accepting it at all. So the Baha'is have to accept the facts. That's the most great justice, seeing the facts and the truth with your own eyes and not through the eyes of your neighbor. Once they do this under the covenant, then through the power of God's guidance in the covenant, God will guide them through the 5-step process of Shoghiafendi for them to establish the most great justice in the minds of people like Pope Francis, Biden, Putin, Kirill, Bartholomew, and even Zelensky and our friends in the Ukraine. So this is the road the Baha'is have. And the treatise on leadership forbids them to meddle in politics or to foment war and dissension. Everything that comes out of a Baha'i's mouth should be that religion is the cause of unity. If they start jumping up and down, Mason Remy's the covenant breakers, sue them, shun them, stamp them out, shoot the Bob, banish Baha'u'llah, that's not true religion. Ultimately, once a person hears what I'm talking about, they get where I'm coming from. They can see the facts that I'm going by that were suggested to me that caused me to implement this in my life the way I've chosen to. And if it's not for them, that's fine. We're not like beating a drum saying that other people who don't go along with what we're saying are going to be thrown into the fires of hell. What we're saying is descriptive, that when these covenants are broken, folks, catastrophes result. And the violation of the hands has resulted in this conflagration between Biden and Francis and Putin and Kirill. And it's just terrible. It's a war between two Christian powers over oil and religion. And if we get to the bottom of it and see the truth with our own eyes, that's the most great justice. And when the society accepts the fact of it, this is the most great justice. And then we will have the leaders set up a system externally that gives us a better society for all the people. So that's the best guidance I have for the Baha'is, is to work toward establishing the most great justice. And that means seeing the truth and going by the facts. And in order to jumpstart this process, the Baha'is are going to have to accept the fact that Mason Remy is the first president of the Universal House of Justice, and that headless thing that they elected on Mount Carmel, which at best is an international spiritual assembly, but I don't even like saying it's spiritual. It's prophesied of in the Bible as an abomination of desolation, because there's no republic of God. The kingdom of God has to have a king. It's a government from God ruling upon the throne of David, and with a real kingdom. It's a government from God with laws, subjects, and a king. Now, it's not the ancient form of kingship of the nations, which was the God incarnate lie. It's the line of David. David means beloved, in which God governs us. And the descendant of David's just an equal believer like the rest of us. Which, as an individual person, I'm just as distraught about this world war calamity as everybody else. But I know that this is God's plan to bring about personal, individual spiritual growth by becoming mature, so we can have the most great justice, to use our intellect to see the truth. And I'm aware that it's God's purification process to establish the most great justice for all people of the world, so we can have the most great peace established upon that foundation of truth, fact, reality, olami haq.